Greetings and welcome back to Room 303 and our chats with Emily as we are calling our readings through the poetry of Emily Dickinson. We are in the Thomas H. Johnson volume. We turn out at poem 796, Who Giants Know with Lesser Men. Another comparison poem for us. Emily is going to make the observation that in some ways all appreciation is relative to the thing that we know. Now, our assumptions are that you've been following our stuff at LearnStrong.net, down that left-hand side, Chats with Emily, our playlist. Hopefully you worked through our set of introductory comments as well as the preceding 795 poems. We just finished with 795. Her final summer was it. Now, in this poem, she's going to use the word unconscious. She'll use that word in 13 of her poems, and we'll study a couple of them. We've already seen that word used a few times. Who giants know with lesser men are incomplete and shy. For greatness that is ill at ease in minor company, a smaller could not be perturbed. The summer gnat displays unconscious that his single fleet do not comprise the skies. It is a brilliant observation. It's a philosophic observation. And we think, of course, of Swift's Gulliver's Travels. We've given full lectures at LearnStrong.net. That everything is about comparison. In other words, when Gulliver's in the land of the Lilliputians, right, okay, he has a certain understanding of size that's completely different from when he, of course, is in the land where he himself is the Lilliputian, the small size, the small stature. Notice we'll begin with giants. And I think she uses the word giants, and it's very possible that she has in mind the idea of those of great stature. Maybe she's thinking about the great poets, Shakespeare, Milton for her would come to mind. Who giants know with lesser men, notice capitalized, are incomplete. In other words, you can't expect lesser people to appreciate giants. Now, some have read this as Emily is making her own observations about her own talents and abilities. She says they're shy. In other words, they don't understand. You'll remember Shy House from 793. For greatness that is ill at ease in minor company. You'll remember Assembly from 789. It's a similar use of the word. Smaller, lesser than was her earlier one. Minor, smaller. A smaller could not be perturbed. In other words, you can't move, you can't affect the smaller mind to show a greater mind. They don't have any relationship. How do we know this? Well, think about gnats. Gnats, she says, the summer gnats, will display. In other words, we see them. They are, however, unconscious that his single fleet do not comprise the skies. If the gnat has the capacity of thinking at all, it would think that what? Because this small space of sky we inhabit, we must inhabit all of the sky, even though, of course, those of us that are standing outside of it, that is to say, giants, greater, have the perspective to be able to say, no, you only have a very small space that you are, in fact, entertaining. I think it's significant for us to study Emily's use of the word unconscious. In 13 of her poems, of course, this being one of them. We saw it already in 233, we saw it in 404, we saw it in 424. You guys will maybe remember 448. This was a poet. It is that distills amazing sense from ordinary meanings and adder so immense from the familiar species that perished by the door. We wonder it was not ourselves arrested it before. Of pictures, the disclosure, the poet, it is he, entitles us by contrast to ceaseless poverty of portion, so unconscious the robbing could not harm himself to him, a fortune exterior to time. You'll remember it in 477. You'll remember it in 508. I'm seated. I've stopped being theirs. The name they dropped upon my face with water in the country church is finished using now, and they can put it with my dolls, my childhood, and the string of spools. I've finished threading too. Baptized before without the choice, but this time consciously of grace unto supremest name, called to my full, the crescent dropped, existence whole arc filled up with one small diadem, my second rank too small, the first crowned, crowning on my father's breast, a half unconscious queen, but this time adequate, erect, with will to choose or to reject, and I choose just a crown. We'll see again this use of unconscious in 879, in 978, in 1002, and in 1054. We're going to see it in 1657. She'll say it this way: Eden is that old-fashioned house we dwell in every day without suspecting our abode until we drive away. How fair on looking back the day we sauntered from the door, unconscious our returning, but discover it no more. And then finally we'll see it in 1773 when she says it this way: the summer that we did not prize, her treasures were so easy, instructs us by departing out, and recognition lazy bestirs itself, puts on its coat, and scans with fatal promptness for trains that moment of our sight, unconscious of his smartness. I find it amazing that in several of Emily's most powerful poems, she uses this phrase unconscious. What is the argument that she's making it to it? I think she's arguing that knowledge of greatness makes appreciation of lesser difficult, right? And I think her argument is a perspicacity argument. In other words, consciousness is hard. You have to have the capacity to step outside or beyond yourself. And the primary way, obviously, you do this is by entertaining giants or greatness. And to be, well, I love her word choice, of course, of the use of the word unconscious, which leads us to the, obviously, 12 other poems where she uses unconscious. Think about Freud's interpretation of dreams in 1900 and, of course, 1915. The unconscious, as well as Carl Jung's Symbols of Transformation, and as well the 1916 essay, the Statue of the Unconscious. Finally, at 3b, to own a poem like this: when was a time you realized that you were in the presence of greatness, and it kind of blew your mind because you realized that you were standing next to a giant? You're nearly 800 poems into this study with us. Is Emily becoming that giant for you? I hope so. Thank you.